We all know, well, at least we've been made to believe that Kiwis love property. Over every other investment one can make, buying property seems to be our thing. Now, there are murmurs that most investors buying properties are banking on capital gains to make them pay off, as there's a warning that anyone expecting a repeat of the capital gains seen over recent decades will be disappointed. Around 20% of sales are currently to property investors, but the latest data showed about 93% required the investors to top up the mortgage payments, assuming the full purchase price was borrowed. Rental yields, that's the measure of rent an investor can receive compared to the property purchase price, had dropped significantly over the years as well. So someone buying a nationally median priced house in 2000 might have paid about $170,000. Oh gosh, those were the days. And rented it for the national median of say $200 a week. Now that same property could be worth $770,000 and rent is more like $600. So historically, 10% was what people aimed for, yet less than 1 in 200 properties in New Zealand have a 10% rental yield or higher. The average is actually closer to 4.2%. Right, so knowing all of that, is property still where it's at? Will we see the return of the boom years? Well, it's great to have back on the show. In fact, I think we just might as well give him a slot here because we love to talk to him. It's property commentator Ashley Church. Hello, Ashley.
G'day, Leah.
Going to have to start paying you, I think. Better talk to Shane about that. Look, so historically I was just talking about 10% was what people aimed for the yield, but you'd be pretty hard pressed now to get that. Is that a concern for investors?
Oh, look, it'll be a very, very, very long time since investors have aimed for a 10% yield. So while that first part of what you just said is essentially correct, it's a long time that's happened over a long period of time. Go back to the 80s, and that's probably how long you're talking. You used to have what you called positively geared rental properties, and what positively geared meant was if the rent on the property covered all of the cost of the outgoings, the mortgage interest, the rates, the insurance, the maintenance, all that other stuff, then it was described as positively geared, which just meant that it basically covered itself and there might even be a little bit of profit left over. But that position's been eroding for a very long period of time, and it's a very long time since you would have had returns out of anything like 10%. So property investors know that when they go into an investment property, and they buy for capital gain. They buy for the long term. They buy on the basis that they understand that although they're probably going to, they're almost certainly going to have to top up the property in order to make it financially viable, that over a period of time that property is going to double in value, and therefore they're going to get their money back and then some that way. Correct, but hardly news. So then these kind of warnings, is it not? Is property still, I suppose, a good investment? It is. It's interesting because, and in fact, because I've seen that article you were referring to, and in the article it brushes over the fact that same property's now worth maybe $700,000. That's the key point. That same property's now worth $700,000. That they paid $170 odd for whatever the median price was back in 2000. So it's gone up maybe 4 times in value, and that's why property investors buy them, because over the long term they're going to be worth a lot more than they paid for them. And by the way, and this is a bit that was missed in that story completely, rent goes up too. Doesn't go up quickly, but it goes up. Well, it went up quickly under the last government, but it goes up. It goes up over a long period of time. So that also means that over a long time, 15, 20 years, that property do actually become positively geared because the rent outstrips the cost of actually owning the property.
There is a ceiling on that, though, Ashley, isn't there, when it comes to rent? I mean, you can only ask for so much before, even though there's a lot of people wanting rentals, they just can't afford it. You can price yourself out of the market.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. There is always a tension between those two things. On the one hand, there is sort of a natural equilibrium to what people will pay. On the other hand, at times when, in an area, for example, like Auckland, where there might not be as many rentals as are required, that does naturally push it up. So that tension always exists and always will, to be honest. That's the nature of the free market.
Will the debt-to-income ratio change the trajectory of capital growth?
Won't change capital growth at all. I noticed in that same article that they were talking about that would slow it down. What the debt-to-income ratio will do is it will be yet one more nail in the coffin for first-time buyers. So for a first home buyer with, let's say for argument's sake, a household income between two people of 150 grand, they'll be able to borrow, I think, 7 times that plus their deposit. So, maybe a property of a little over $1 million in Auckland, that's depending on where you are, that could mean that they'll be scratching. But it's not going to make any difference at all to the rest of the market. And I'll tell you why. About a third of the people that buy property don't have a mortgage. So about a third of homeowners in New Zealand don't have a mortgage and therefore aren't affected by the debt-to-income ratio restrictions. And for property investors in particular, particularly people who've got a portfolio of more than 2 or 3 properties, that those properties are all earning an income themselves, which means that when you add that up, if they've had that portfolio for a long period of time, they've got a bit of equity, then they're going to be in a position to buy more investment properties the same as they always have been. The other thing to note, that for somebody who owns a property with no mortgage or a small mortgage, and they're upgrading from, let's just say, for argument's sake, a house worth $2 million to a house worth $2.5 million, that's a relatively small additional mortgage. It's not going to impact too greatly on them in respect of those restrictions. So for all of those reasons, the people who benefit from the property market at the moment will continue to benefit from it, and the poor old first home buyers who are the hardest hit will be even harder hit than they've been now.
Although, having said that, you were saying, so a couple on that collectively makes 150,000. You were saying that now they can borrow up to,
I think it's 7 times income.
So it's about $1 million,
whatever 7 times income is. So what's that? 1.1 something.
Close.
But I mean, plus whatever their deposit was.
Didn't I just see recently, because there has been a dip, the average now in Auckland is just under $1 million. It's like 980 or something. So there's a couple of million, You can get something now under $1 million. I know that sounds ridiculous, but you can if you look around.
Yeah, you can. And so those people will still be able to buy. I guess the point I'm making is that over a period of time, if these things continue, then house prices continue to go up, which they will. And that's the other thing you haven't asked me, which is really important, is house prices will continue to increase. There's nothing sure. We're going through this weird period at the moment, but we will come out of this at some point and house prices will go up again. And so as that happens, the tension on those first home buyers just gets greater and greater.